Good morning, everybody. This is Cindy from Ideas Times 2, and I have a short tutorial for you today. This is a very beginner journal. If you are just getting started in journaling, in bookmaking, in crafting, and you think this might be a craft for you, this is a perfect tutorial. And I would like to first start with a bit of an apology. I'm just getting over laryngitis, and my voice is about an octave lower than normal, and it keeps cracking, so please have patience. I did not want to wait until my throat was completely healed, because who has time for that? So this is what we're going to be making. I have some examples here, and these are just little soft covered fabric journals, and a simple elastic closure, and on the inside just one signature junk journal style. And these journals are about 6.5-ish inches wide, 9.5 inches tall, and I did make a spine that's about an inch. And so I have a few examples here, and I would like to take a few minutes to show you how I made these, and let's go ahead and get started. So what you're going to need for this project is a piece of fairly heavy-duty cardstock or lightweight cardboard, and you could use you know, like what I have here. This is cardstock, but this cover that I made, I used the back of a 12 by 12 pack of scrapbooking paper. You could use a cereal box, a Triscuit box, any kind of cracker. They're pretty lightweight. I would go with that. And my guess is for this project you would have everything in the house that you would need and not have to run out to the store to buy anything. So I'm on a spending fast right now, so my projects all have to be with what I have in the house, and so this is perfect for that. So your cardstock should be about 12.5 inches wide, 9 inches tall. And then you'll need 2 pieces of fabric that are coordinating or matching or not. It doesn't matter. Use what you have in the house. What looks good to you doesn't matter. What I'm using here is a cotton duck, and your fabric should be about 13 inches wide and 9.5 inches tall. And the reason I picked this size is because I did not want to have to cut my paper. And so with this kind of journal, it literally could be any size that you want or any size that you need. But this is what I went with because I was using, for my signature, for the interior of the book, I'm using just your standard 8.5 by 11 coffee stained paper, printer paper. So that's why I went with this size. But if you have need for smaller, something you can fit in your purse, your handbag, or you want something a little bigger, it's up to you. This technique doesn't really require a specific size. I just chose this size because that's what what best fit my paper. So this is super easy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Fabri-Tac today to glue my fabric to the cover piece here. And the reason I decided to go with Fabri-Tac is because it's perfect in a tutorial. It goes really fast. It also does a really good job of permanently holding that fabric to the paper. If I were doing a more formal, a different kind of journal, I would probably be using different glue, but I'm going to go with Fabri-Tac today. And I'm going to go all the way around the edge, but I'm going to leave maybe 1/4 of an inch around the outside because this journal requires some sewing and I don't want to gum up my machine. So I'm just going to be pretty generous, but I don't want any globs because, as you guys know, glue bleeds through fabric, and that's one nice thing with the Fabri-Tac. If you are judicious and fairly careful, you won't bleed through. And there's nothing you can do about that. Once that happens, you have to find some kind of embellishment to cover it up. And there's nothing wrong with that either, is there? Most journalers like their embellishments. So I'm just going to slide this around a little bit, make sure that I have a little bit of an edge all the way around. And I'm using fabric scraps, and you can see it's not cut perfectly evenly, but that's because this was literally the last of this fabric that I had, and I wanted to make sure that it was, you know, I wanted to use it up. And I forgot a step, and I'm going to have to backtrack just a second here. Please forgive me, and this is the last of the journals I need to make, so I can't even like do this on another one. If you would like a spine like this one, that's just got a you know, a 1-inch spine, you're going to need to score it ahead of time. This one I did not score. I wanted just kind of a rounded edge on this one, so I didn't score it, so that is up to you. If you do want to score this, this paper is about 12 inches wide, so I'm going to score carefully. This might not work too well. Score, wasn't too bad. Score on the 5.5-inch mark and the 6.5-inch mark. Yeah, you want to do this before you glue that fabric on, otherwise it is more difficult, but still doable. And no matter how prepared you are, no matter how long you've been crafting, we all know we still make mistakes, right? Most of the time they work out fine. So a little bit more maneuvering, but you can see that worked really well. Like I said, this is just a remnant that I had, so it's a little smaller than the rest of my journals, and so my paper here is 8 by 12, so it's a little smaller than the rest of my journals. And I think it's still going to work fine though with my signature. So we're just going to go for it. So the rest of my journals were a little bigger, 12.5 inches by 9. And so the score marks for this size journal would be at 5 3/4 inch and 6 3/4 inches to give you that 1 inch spine. So now I'm going to actually, I think I want the flowers on the outside. So we'll just kind of maneuver those score lines. I'll have to blame my foggy-headedness on my cold medicine. So I'm going to do the same thing for the outside of my cover, and I'm going to put a bead all the way around the outside, about 1/4 inch from the edge, so I don't gum up my sewing machine. And I'm putting a fair amount of glue on there so that I don't wind up with little puckers in the fabric. If you want to use a different kind of glue, I would recommend using a glue that is not water-based. The water-based glues will bleed through your fabric easier than the Fabri-Tac. Fabri-Tac was made for fabric, obviously, with a name like Fabri-Tac. There we go. This will be the outside cover. There, and I'm, there we go. So 1-inch margin, or spine, and then plenty of room on the inside for my signature. It'll fit just like that. All right, so the next step is the sewing, and I'm going to leave my edges raw. And I've already sewn this one because I figured you would not want to listen to me sew. My sewing machine is literally right by my left hand, and I don't even have to move from my chair, but nobody wants to listen to somebody wonky sew around a piece of fabric 3 times. But you can see on the edge, I just went around 3 times, and I call this wonky sewing. I don't know if somebody else has a better name for it, but I don't worry about straight lines on this one. I just want it to be fun, and my stitches are fairly wide, and I just went around 3 times, and you know, left my edges raw. If you prefer a cleaner look, you know, go ahead and you know, sew the edges down, sew straight lines. I've done all of that in different journals, and I think they're all beautiful. That you know, it's up to you how you want to do this. You know, you're the crafter, so it is completely up to you. If you want a spine, if you want a rounded edge, if you want clean lines, if you want straight sewing, if you want a zigzag stitch, all good. And the next thing you'll need to do is prepare your signature. And what I'm using for this is one fairly large signature, and with 20 sheets of paper. I have you know, your regular coffee dye, some coffee dyed lined paper, some short pages, a book page, some tracing paper, some hand marbled paper, and this is just regular typing paper, but I dyed it with you know, just kitchen dye, food safe kitchen dye, and some more printed paper, and more coffee stain, and some graph paper, and there you go, just 20 pages of all different kinds of paper. And the next thing we need to do once your signature is prepared, or once you have gathered your paper, I always recommend folding the paper individually, one piece at a time, and using a bone folder to make sure that your edges are nice and crisp before you put it all together, because it will make it you know, not quite so bulky. And so to sew your signature into your journal, you're going to need some kind of a pokey tool, an awl or a large needle would work fine. You'll need some kind of thread or floss. I don't recommend using, you know, standard sewing thread. And for this one, I'm going to use this turquoise. This is cotton. Actually, no, it's not cotton. It feels like hemp. And this is unwaxed. But there are lots of different kinds of threads that you can use. You can use a lightweight jute I've used before. This here is a waxed cotton thread. You can use, excuse me, you can use embroidery floss, but you do want something fairly thick and sturdy for this kind of journal, and so this is what I'm going to use today. You'll also want a fairly good sized needle. Obviously with a thick thread like that, you're going to want something that is big enough, the eye is big enough for that kind of floss. So I'm going to use this size needle with a fairly dull edge. And for this many papers, I know a lot of people just have enough experience, maybe have an extra set of hands, I don't know. But I like to have clips to hold my signature together so that it holds the paper steady, and especially with those short pieces. Right now they're lined up so that they're where they belong, and the clips will help hold everything in place so I don't accidentally not get those short pieces sewn in. So there's my signature. I've already pre-punched my holes in here, and I'm just doing a 3-hole standard pamphlet stitch. And so the middle hole is right smack in the middle. My paper is 8.5 inches wide, so this is at 7 1/4, and my 2 holes on the end are at 3/4 of an inch from the edge. I don't measure from the middle, I measure from the edge. And you can see I punched through the entire stack. I've also pre-punched my my cover, and I'm going to do this cover. I bind the book into this cover. Your thread, you're going to need about 3 times the height, and I want to leave longer edges on this one, so I'm just going to cut off some extra there. And I should have pre-done my needle, but the light was good, and I just thought it was time to do this tutorial. So when you're doing a pamphlet stitch, you can start from either the excuse me, I'm so sorry. You can start either from the outside or the inside. It just depends on where you want the end of your threads to be. And so you can see on this one, I've started on the inside because I want my tails to be on the inside of the book. For this kind of journal, that's what I would recommend. You start on the inside. You go through all 20 or all of the pages in your signature, and then for this journal, we're going directly through the cover. You want to make sure that you leave your tail. I always kind of hold it with my left hand, making sure that I'm holding that tail down because I don't want it to come loose and pull through. And then I always go then, my next hole is through the top, outside, and then up through the holes of the signature. And you want to make sure that you don't pull too tight, and you don't have to pull really at all at this point because you will have time to do that later. And if you've used directional paper in your journal at all, you want to make sure that you have the top at the top. There's my cat Lizzie. She's not quite as friendly as Wendy's Leo, but she winds up in every one of my videos. She goes back and forth between the windows that are on each side of my craft table. There we go. I was being stubborn on this one. So, and then you're going to, you start in the middle on the inside, up through the top on the outside, and then you're going to go from the top all the way to the bottom. Through all the papers, and then that hole on the bottom. So it should look like that so far. And now I'm going to go up through the same middle hole. And why I recommend using a dull needle is because you don't want to accidentally go through the different plies of your thread. If you do that, you're going to have to take it out. So if you use a dull needle, you're less likely to accidentally go through those plies. And then up through the middle. So the outside should look like that. The inside should look like this. You want to make sure that the two tails of your thread, one is on each side. See, this tail is to the left of the thread, and this tail is to the right. You want to make sure that they go around, and then you just tie it into a square knot after you've made sure that it's tight enough on the outside, but not too tight. If you are too tight, then you could tear the holes, and it makes it a little harder too. I think actually mine needs to be a little tighter. Take that out. And tight enough, but not too tight. Okay, that feels better. And then I'm just going to tie it in a knot. Double knot this time, since it's definitely tight enough. And I'm going to trim my tails to the same length. But I want, for this journal, to have the tails longer for the finished product. I'd like to at least give myself the option to add some beads or some dangles to the end of those tails. And so there we go. It's a nice standard journal. Now, when you get to this point, you have to decide how you are going to close it. Are you going to have a closure? And you have a lot of options. You can use a length of ribbon and just tie it on there. You can use a length of elastic and just tie the elastic into a knot and slip it on and off as you open the journal. For this one, though, I think I'm going to actually attach the elastic. This is definitely not the pink, not the blue. Starting to run a little low. I kind of like the rust. It's pretty close to that red. So for your elastic, your length is going to be determined by the width of your journal, and you want it to be able to go around twice comfortably. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too loose either. And so for this journal, let's see, this is about 10, 18, this is about 18 inches long for this one. And I'm going to attach it using my, with an eyelet. So I'm going to use my crocodile. If you don't have a crocodile, there are other ways, but you can attach this. But this is, for me, is pretty easy. So I'm going to make my hole for the eyelet right next to that center of my signature, and then I'm going to, I think I'm going to go with kind of an antiqued little eyelet there. And then using the crocodile again, I'm going to affix the this is a little awkward angle doing the sitting down while I'm filming. I'm going to do that one again. It was a little sloppy. That's better. Okay, so I just put the hole there, and then I'm going to take the two ends of my elastic from the inside, or from the outside to the inside, and I'm going to just tie a knot. You know, if you don't want to use the eyelet, you actually could just leave your elastic like this and do it like that and just take it on and off. But if you have a crocodile, or another way to attach eyelets, I think this is a good way to go. I know that I would lose my elastic if I did it that way, or my cat would steal it, one or the other. And so at this point, your journal is basically done. And at this point, if you want to add, you know, some pockets to the inside, or if you want to decorate the cover, embellish it in some way, now's your chance to do that. Just be aware that there's a closure on there. You don't want to put something too big or puffy. I like my journals to be fairly flat and neat. I don't like, because I use them for writing, so I don't like them when they're too puffy or too embellished, because then it's harder to write. But the choice is up to you. You know, if you want to add some lace or ribbon, slap on some pictures, you know, do some applique, whatever. It's all up to you. So basically at this point you're done. Pretty simple, huh? And very quick. If you would like, and this one is big enough to add another signature. If you would like to add another signature, it'd be very easy to do. Just right here on the other side of that eyelet, and you have a nice fat journal to put all your secrets in. So that really is it. I think I'm going to cover my elastic with an aglet so that the knot doesn't come loose. But other than that, this journal is finished, and I really appreciate your taking some of your time today to watch. If you are brand new to journaling, this is the perfect place to start, because you really don't need to buy anything. If you don't have any elastic, you don't need elastic. You can use ribbon, you can use jute, you can you know, make a braid of embroidery floss. If you know, you don't have cotton duck, but you have some leftover upholstery fabric, you know, that's what you should use. If you don't have any heavyweight cardstock, but you just finished your Captain Crunch this morning, you know, use the box. Instead of recycling it, putting it in your recycle bin, reuse it in a journal. The choice is up to you. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And hopefully in my next video, I won't have such a scratchy throat. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And our store, once again, is Ideas Times 2 on Etsy. Our blog is ideastimes2.com. And we thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.